Hi, welcome to the PlaceOS podcast. I'm John McFarlane. Today's guest is Paul Ruppert. He's an expert in telecommunications, specifically in CPaaS, and we'll get to what that acronym means immediately in the interview. We talk about platform business models and a lot of things around telecommunication and platform. It's interesting to talk to you because on our podcast, we're mostly talking about technology. But Paul, your background is certainly in technology, in telecommunications, but your role now is really helping businesses with partnership models. Is that right?
That's correct. Not only the partnerships, but also there is a degree of technology relative to the partnerships aspect,
Yeah.
obviously, as well as being able to identify strategy to leverage that technology and then extend it into the commercial aspects.
I think like technology and business model have never been so coupled as they are right now. And uh, for our company, PlaceOS, as a platform-based company, we've adopted a platform-based business model,
Hmm.
and that's certainly centered around partnerships because our aim is to be the center of an ecosystem
Right.
and have value created for our partners, so they can make of our platform what they wish and create their own value from our platform. And I think this platform business model has worked so well for so many companies. Everyone uses Salesforce as one of the prime examples. But it's this intertwining of technology and business model, which is only relatively new. And I imagine you maybe have seen that progression over time working on platforms within telecommunications.
Exactly. The space that I'm in is the acronym. Of course, there's got to be an acronym for it.
Yeah,
It's called
define
CPaaS.
let's define
Yeah.
acronyms up front so people know what we're talking
Right.
about.
So it's referred to as CPaaS, and it stands for Communications Platforms as a Service. So you've just covered many of the facets, and these are terms of art. So it's not like you can pull off the Oxford English Dictionary and there it is.
Yeah.
Um, but the dynamics of it is that this is a SaaS-based business model, and as you just outlined, you are providing an aspect of a platform of platforms within the context of CPaaS, Communications Platforms as a Service. And within the architecture and the technologies that are being lashed together,
Mhm.
the platform of platforms concept again, include SMS, voice, traditional voice, now emerging video, including OTT capabilities, over the top type messaging, and that we all see in Facebook or WhatsApp or Viber or Line or Kakao, depending on where you are.
That's a new acronym for me, by the way. So over the top
Oh, really?
technology. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm not
It's
familiar with that
been
one.
That's a long-standing term in the telecommunications business, and when I say
Yeah,
long-standing, it's probably well over a decade.
yeah,
And that gets into the dynamics of how messaging works, but we won't get distracted by that piece of the technology. We can
yeah,
address it if you like. Um, and then the last piece of it is legacy email capabilities. And
yeah.
well, I shouldn't say the last piece. Legacy email, and then the last piece is now the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning
Mhm.
functionality to these capabilities. Now, as I call it, the nirvana state is not only that one provider is able to manage these various engagements for an enterprise, providing that means, that channel, that bridge to the end consumer, because that's really what this is all about, but then is able to integrate the back end piece, which is characterizes customer data platforms, and so there's a seamless exchange of information and functionality on the back end, so that whether the data on you relative to your demographic, your billing capabilities, whether you're billing it off, outside of the carrier or inside the carrier, called direct carrier billing, all these facets. That's why I say the nirvana state would be able to blend together, work together.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but we're heading there. So
Is the challenge just um, like what provider would have all of those skills in house? there couldn't be any one provider that could do all of those or provide all of those elements, right? So,
They're getting
is
there.
this why partnerships is
Yeah.
still so critical?
And partnerships are the, let's say, the diplomatic way of working together. There are other ways, which is just pure acquisition and
Yeah.
integration, whether it's a technical tuck in or whether it's buying a very large entity. The space and most of these companies, uh, most I should say all of them, but I'm gonna hedge my bet here. Uh, Originated in the messaging space,
Yeah.
primarily because of the architecture of text messaging and how text messaging works on a commercial basis. And then because of the phenomenon of text messaging, we are now in the realm of producing teens of trillions of economic units on an annualized basis that fly through the air.
Mhm.
Very few economic outcomes and outputs are measured in teens of trillions on an
Yeah.
annualized basis,
Yeah.
and that continue to grow. Up to the pandemic, we were happy at around 10 to 12%. But since then, we're now over 30%. And in my conversations with some of my former competitors and colleagues in the space, some of them are telling me we're looking at a CAGR of 43% for the next 3 years. And these are guys who hold a commercial responsibility. So they're
Mhm.
putting their reputation on the line as well as their performance and assessments that they think they're going to be able to do much better than the average.
So you mentioned we're almost there with the sort of nirvana vision that you laid out. What's the missing piece? What still needs to happen?
The whole means of being able to have these customer data platform interactions, the data side, which
Mm.
is right in your wheelhouse.
Mhm.
That's your center of the target, as I understand what you guys do. And that's one of the aspects that are moving ahead. But when I say it's close, I speak in mobile network operator years,
Yeah.
which is, it usually takes about a year to close a deal with a mobile network operator,
Oh yeah.
sometimes longer. So,
Yeah.
this is a 3 year window, let's call it that, an over the horizon opportunity. We're not talking about 3 months from now, you're going to be seeing at Optus or Telstra
Mhm.
advertising, things of that nature. But
Yeah.
they still exist.
And that time frame is short by comparison with the building industry, which I do a lot of work in. So,
There
smart
you go.
buildings, it's sometimes a 10-year plan. So it could be you could be part of a 10-year sales cycle in some regard,
Yeah,
um, from architecture design to final product, the building erected
that's
is a
right.
very long time. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah. So telcos, I've always seen telcos as providing the infrastructure layer quite effectively. I've worked with telecommunication companies um, providing solutions, but they've always had to sub experts in various parts of that solution. Um,
Hmm.
and we see this in sort of our niche of smart buildings. There's a lot of user experience involved in smart building design. So telecommunication companies in that regard are not usually strong in user experience design,
That's right.
and that's
No
something they
question.
bring in and subcontract. But then there's all types of niche knowledge in the smart building, things from building subsystems, which you only know it if you're in it. Uh, and then more specialized protocols and things communicating on the network. I see my sort of focus on platform as uh, being a little while off until one company can provide every part of that for smart building, um, and that's why partnership for PlaceOS has been so critical. So we've gone out and we've found partners that are great at user experience design. So
Hmm.
we work with them building workplace applications on top of our platform, or user interfaces, or some sort of user experience in the lobby, the car space, the enterprise workplace, or the tenancy, whatever it may be. Uh, and then we have specialist sort of system integrators that can roll out the network, set up the
Hmm.
Wi-Fi triangulation, get that data back into our platform. And as you touched on, data is a strong part of what we're doing, but sort of by accident, because we started on just improving the user experience, and the consequence of that is data. And now we're sort of graduating into leading with data, not just having it as the consequence of what we do.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It's an area that needs some work, and part of that is maybe um, uh, closed off systems. You know, working with particular cloud providers and their tooling versus other cloud providers and their tooling, uh, and AI meaning different things for different people, and it's coming up in products that, when you look at it, don't actually have any true AI. It's
Yes.
very
Right.
rare to see.
Right.
Uh, and when you do find something interesting with machine learning, quite often the vendors that invented it don't even know how it works, and it's hard to sort of get anywhere with it. And that's, I feel like, if we look at the hype cycle, we're at
Hmm.
the peak
Hmm.
when it comes to AI and data. I'm still in
Yeah. The
meetings about
trough of
data.
disillusionment that we have to go through. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that the last point on data is, because AI isn't where I think people sell it as being. Humans are needed, and the insights still come from the people, and the data is just the tools for them.
Fully concur. Even in the messaging business, as you just laid it out, um, all of this, the foundation, the cornerstone of the initiatives was all about being able to create transport networks for an SMS in the
Yeah,
early days. And the third party players came in because the operators themselves, in some cases, had different commercial models. And in most of the cases, initially, it was only on the GSM radio format, as it's referred to. So GSM, native GSM phones and networks. And companies like one that I was involved in came up with the idea, let's use the internet, let's use an IP solution so we can take these text messages and flow them into non GSM formats, i.e., CDMA, otherwise known as Verizon in the United States, or TDMA, which was originally AT&T, or Handy Phone, which was originally NTT Docomo, and we were able to develop that market. So we went from early stages of moving messages to then providing analysis on the data, meaning the tracking of the messages, where they were flowing, where they were originating from, what was the speed, seeing and then seeing opportunities where we were identifying fraud. Because, early on, if somebody was sending 60 messages, 60 messages a minute, and I say, this is 20 years ago, we
yeah,
knew that that was fraud. I mean, that's essentially a mobile phone farm, as they're called. And so we then started offering more and more solutions, and we started laddering up in our capabilities.
mhm,
But now, just as we started off, how many of these companies that started off as these messaging providers, these transport providers, have the capability to be able to discuss things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, even video?
yeah,
Video is taken off because of our experience in COVID, but it's also completely aligned with the emergence of 5G. Now, if
yeah,
you were to ask most guys like me who are in the business, what does 5G really mean? At root, it means faster speed. Faster speed means better video. So
mhm.
we've got these two converging forces that are going to, have a quantum impact going to another level. So this is where we are in the marketplace that I'm involved in, the development
Is
of these companies.
is that thinking, 5G equals faster video? Is that just related to, well, what needs internet to be this fast on mobile devices? And right now, it's only video. I imagine there's going to be user cases we can't think of that maybe are outside of the world of video that 5G will be beneficial for.
Yeah, unintended consequences
Yeah,
is always the play.
yeah,
As I said, the unintended consequences of opening up your network early on to um, providers that, enterprise related providers that then flooded your network. The carriers never thought about that.
yeah,
And so they had to they didn't have the technical means at that point to control that. So they essentially put in place higher pricing for different types of messaging than person to person, unintended consequences. So in the
yeah.
same way, um, the utilization of two-factor authentication. Well, it's a basic message. It's just being sent to you with a little code. Today, two-factor authentication is about 40% of the overall volume of enterprise-related messaging globally.
Interesting. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that unintended consequences is interesting from a policy point of view too, right? And that you've got some background in policy. Um, I, I'm quite
well, economic
frustrated.
development, not really technology development, but
Sure,
yes,
yeah,
yeah,
but
I've been in the beast. I know how it thinks.
I'm just thinking of a local example here in Australia. The Australian government was rolling out the fibre network across
Hmm.
Australia, the national broadband network, and they compromised after spending tens of billions of dollars. They started to compromise and made it fiber to the node instead of fiber to the home. Uh,
Okay.
and I remember politicians getting up saying, "Well, why do we need internet to be this fast?" Basically saying you can stream your two videos at the same time. Like they weren't thinking of any commercial application. They weren't thinking of what the future holds and
Yeah.
very short term thinking.
I'm a big proponent of government, but the reality is government is usually two generations behind the reality of the
Yeah,
marketplace.
yeah,
So that's why you have guys that go up to our Capitol Hill and you see these dialogues, these mini dramas that unfold where they're speaking completely different languages because some 75-year-old guy who's been a US senator for 24 years doesn't have any concept of how
yeah,
this works and the knock-on effects
hmm
of economic impact of such things as telecommunications and telecommunication speed. And all of this is proven out and researched to the nth degree in places like in Korea and other places where you can see the economic impact of speed. uh,
yeah.
you know, it, it it it's criminal in the sense that they should be serving their constituents better because then everybody benefits. And you light up. Right now there's $12 billion in the most recent um, bill that was put in terms of the reconstruction being implemented in the U.S. And those $12 billion is all about expanding broadband.
Yeah.
And the key there is, okay, let's get broadband into the corners of urban America that are not lighted, as well as the vast open areas of rural America that are not lighted.
hmm
And that will then create an economic impact. I used to work for a guy who was a cabinet secretary named Jack Kemp, and he was the secretary for housing and urban development. So that's why the economic development piece of my vision. And he was always talking about expanding the pie, lifting all the boats because a rising tide would lift all boats. So, you provide these kind of technological capabilities, and it makes all of life more convenient.
And I think the more on sort of the unintended consequences. Sometimes multiple technologies line up at the same time to enable something that wasn't thought of. And in my mind, there's technologies I'm looking forward to lining up more than they are now, and that's speed from 5G, and then connectivity from
Mhm.
IPv6, and having more. If we have more speed and more connectivity, I can get more things into a central platform
That's right.
to enable smart city features, smart building
Yeah.
features, or something I'm not thinking of right now.
Yeah. I got involved in machine to machine messaging back in 1997, where we did a trial. It was in Colorado Springs, and it was with what is today is known as T-Mobile US. Back then, it was called VoiceStream. Um, to essentially provide information to farmers on their aquifer and watering their crops. So it was all based on text messaging.
Yeah,
Okay. But that was so early on that no one ever thought about what are the other things that can be done here. And then later on in my career, I had again, involved in a pilot project with Otis Elevator, where if there was a problem
great.
with an escalator, messages would go out to the engineers to be able to identify what's the issue, where it is, and be able to go fix it. Simple things like that.
Yeah,
Now we're far more advanced on that. And then when you start talking about what you just talked about, the whole notion of smart buildings and smart cities, these are all wide area networks that are going to be overlapping and communicating with each other at the same time, and being able to manage that not only on the data side, as we talked about earlier, but then also how it's going to be physically manifested in the
Hmm.
activity of human beings. I've heard some things where people are like, well, the messaging business, text messaging is probably going to disappear. Well, first, my argument is, at what rate are we talking about? The new technology, a displacing technology, displacing text, at like 50% growth rate on a year by year basis. Well, we're talking about trillions again. And then the other piece is that I always assert that if people get used to something that makes their life more convenient, which, when you talk about wireless, I was in this business almost at the beginning, where we used to say wireless is all about being untethered from the wall. So that's what allows us to make these telephone calls while we're on the move, going skiing or at the beach or whatever it might be. You're completely untethered. They're not going to go backwards. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I don't think I really need this convenience. It's not how the world works. I want this
yeah,
convenience and I want more. And I didn't know I needed this, but I want more of it.
yeah,
That's human beings.
yeah, and not replacing technology if it works, right? Like not having technology for technology's sake, but
Right.
only when innovation is needed. I mean, that should be the definition of innovation: to solve novel problems, not to solve problems you already have in a new way.
Yeah.
Um, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, problems you've already solved in a new way.
Yeah. Understood.
So, tell me more about what you're doing now and how you consult with businesses.
So I provide primarily both to enterprises as well as the companies that enable all of this to happen, which at one point were my competitors or my colleagues. The means to be able to identify what those opportunities would be in leveraging text messaging, in leveraging the CPaaS platform.
Yeah.
So that's not only being able to work with, let's say, Wells Fargo in terms of how they're going to be able to process various types of financial transactions, but also customer care companies like Live Person, which is a very large customer experience call center software provider, um, as well as United Airlines, et cetera. How do you use this platform more effectively to communicate with your changing consumer base? Because the reality is, honestly, I'm a trailing boomer, and millennials and Gen Z, who are now moving into the mass market purchasing power in the marketplace, they don't really use mobile phones. They don't use even telephony the way I did and the
Hmm.
way I do. I don't have a problem making a telephone call. I'm a little frustrated. Recently, I was looking to go to a city, go skiing, well known. I will remain unsaid, but their chamber of commerce on their website, there was no telephone anywhere,
Yeah.
no
Okay.
telephone number. And
Yeah.
I was told that the city was no longer having public transport to the ski resort. And I'm like, wait a minute, how are you supposed to get from either hotel or whatever if there's no clear transport? And there
Yeah.
was no clear definition. So I figured, okay, I'll call the Chamber of Commerce. No. Finally, I literally resorted to calling the mayor's office in the city,
Yeah.
okay, and asking, look, I can't get a definitive answer here. Now, if I got to rent a car, that's fine, but I can't pick it up anywhere. And they're like, well, yeah, because of COVID, and this sheepish answer. And I was thinking to myself, how could this is a well-known ski resort out west, big mountain, and I'm like, how do you get away with this? I mean, if I was the CEO of the resort, I'd be pounding on. I need to have these transport routes up and running. So that
Yeah.
my point
So
here
that
is that they
it
have
puts
different
the
takes. Yeah.
yeah, and they put the onus on you to do the research and find out
And
what's going
solve the
on.
problem.
Yeah,
Right. And
rather than
so
just
all of this
call
goes back
information.
to, if I just had that multi-platform functionality or capability, I would have been able to pull that out instead
Yeah.
of, no, I'm looking online. Where is this? Not there.
Yeah.
I called a hotel and one said yes, one said no,
I
etc. So
I probably sit in the middle, and probably a reason why people need to consider the full platform, where I would be searching for a chat to online chat to the whatever
sure.
company. I prefer to do that than have to call someone or be on. But in certain situations, when you a stressful situation or something, I had a similar thing. I had to. It took ages to get to a local branch of a Hertz hire car
Hmm.
just because I wanted to confirm I booked a baby seat for my trip would have been a disaster if my baby couldn't sit in the seat in
Of
the car. So
course. Right. Right.
so that's where like it's hours of like up to an hour because you're on hold trying to get to local things instead of just better communication.
And exactly that point, because there's research, again, because I've worked with some customer care companies. There's research that shows that if you're provided with an asynchronous solution, so what I was doing was it's
Yeah,
synchronous. I wanted an immediate answer because I was tired of waiting, so I wanted to talk to a human being. But if I had more patience, I could have dropped that text message or working with that chat functionality, just like you were looking to do, and then I could have gotten an answer, the next morning, and I would have been fine with, "Thank
yeah,
you, Mr. Rupert, but there is no transport available because of these reasons." Okay, I got my resolution there.
yeah,
So all of this can be done in different functionality, and then as a result of that, so let's say there was a call center at the resort that I was calling, well, those call center employees, it's about 100% turnover every 90 days. So
mm,
there's a high stress in terms of being able to address these kind of calls, balancing them all out at the same time. It's just a high stress job. And by putting it into an asynchronous modality, that gives a little bit more relief for the customer
yeah.
care call center rep, which means they end up getting higher job satisfaction, which means they stay longer. So there's this ripple knock on effect
Interesting.
of
Yeah.
different types of platform availability and engagement.
In terms of user experience, it just ticks more user experience stories. And, that's how we would map it out. And I think sometimes platform-based technology doesn't always follow user experience processes in terms of design and scoping. It's often particularly for things that are more back of house or back end or automation.
Right. Right.
Uh, People forget to think about the user experience from end to end and identify those sort of problems from user point of view.
Yeah. It's not easy. It takes a lot of thought
Yeah,
and a lot of testing.
yeah. Well, look, we've hit almost exactly our 30-minute mark. So I think this has been a good sort of snappy conversation. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think we've covered a lot of the landscape relative to your engagement on your side of the equation and my engagement on my side of the equation and how they blend together.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Have a great day.